Welcome into this special edition of the Fast Lane. Trey Lau here with you, and first time doing these special game previews that we've had the same guests in back-to-back weeks is because the Georgia Tech Yellow Jackets go from playing UVA to playing Virginia Tech in back-to-back weeks. So we're joined by the voice of the Yellow Jackets, Andy Demetra. And Andy, let's jump right into it. Looking at the game last week, because we can do that. Solid game by the offense, 570 yards of offense. They had the lead at one point and then they kind of came back late, but it was just too much Brendan Armstrong for this Georgia Tech team. And he really showed out 6 total touchdowns. And it was just a little too much from that UVA offense.
Yeah, Georgia Tech knew what it was in for on Saturday, and that proved to be the case. They got off to a strong start, and that's consecutive road games now where Tech has scored a touchdown on his first 2 drives. But the key now is for them to sustain it. You look at the numbers in the second quarter, they really tailed off, and that enabled Virginia to get rolling where they could take the lead into halftime. And it was somewhat of a harsh lesson that Georgia Tech had to learn, where it's not good enough to be productive in your first 2 drives. You have to be consistent all 60 minutes, especially when you're facing an offense like Virginia. So a tough one to swallow, especially when it started off with so much promise. But Georgia Tech also knows that if it cleans up some things and corrects some details, that it could set themselves up for a strong final month of the season.
Yeah, and you look at the game, it was definitely a good one for Jeff Sims. Other than the interception, he threw for 300 yards, had 3 touchdowns. Georgia Tech was able to run the ball well. Both things they'll need heading into the game against Virginia Tech.
The thing that I think impressed me the most, Trey, and I know that Virginia has had a suspect run defense this year, but Georgia Tech had a very banged up offensive line. They played both starting guards, and those guys really hadn't gotten a lot of snaps this year at those positions, yet they still were able to get a power running game going behind Jahmyr Gibbs, behind Jordan Mason. I thought Jeff Sims was very deft with his zone reads, and especially seeing what Syracuse was able to manage on the ground versus Virginia Tech. That has to be part of the game plan. The Hokies, by and large, have been above average in stopping the run this year, and we've seen Georgia Tech struggle at times when teams load the box and try to snuff out the likes of Gibbs and Mason. So a good setup heading into the week where they were able to get their different weapons on the ground going at different times, because I think that'll be a very important ingredient if they want to walk away with the win on Saturday.
Yeah, jumping into this, we'll talk about the Hokies struggling offense against the Georgia Tech defense in a moment. But Garrett Strader had a phenomenal day against Virginia Tech, and his skill set is very similar to Jeff Sims. His strength is in his legs and his ability to get outside the pocket and make and run the football. So Jeff Sims could have very much a similar day to Garrett Strader had in the game against Syracuse, where using his legs will kind of be a key for him in this one.
I think Sims runs a little differently than Garrett Strader. They're different body compositions, and Strader is more of a power running quarterback. Sims is more in the cutting the cloth of a Braxton Burmeister, where he's shifty, he can get to the edge, but it's all about his ability to make that read key and for his guys up front to hopefully be healthier, hopefully be able to pave the way for him. Because you're right. I think if Georgia Tech can't establish Jeff Sims as a running threat versus Virginia Tech, the challenge becomes a little steeper if they want to beat the Hokies.
And Virginia Tech is coming off of probably their worst performance defensively this season. I mean, this is a defense that took a huge jump this year and is still under a relatively young defensive coordinator in Justin Hamilton. What can Georgia Tech take from, the Syracuse game and, the West Virginia game and a couple of these where it seems that, screens and short passes and the running game really hurts this Virginia Tech defense?
I think it's going to be much in the same design as that Virginia game last Saturday, Trey. I think you have to get Mason and Jahmyr Gibbs rolling early, which then opens the field up for Jeff Sims to call his own number, which also opens the field for Jeff Sims to get that downfield passing game. Georgia Tech's wide receivers, they need to win their one-on-one matchups because we know Virginia Tech likes to play press man. Georgia Tech is very much the same way, and it'll be up to those guys to make sharp routes and be able to catch those contested 50-50 balls. Tech was a little uneven in doing that, despite Sims throwing for 300 against Virginia. They'll need to be across the board a little more consistent. And it goes back to what I said earlier. They need to be have a sustained, complete first half, because I think you'd be in agreement. The beginning of this game on Saturday will very much be a stress test for Virginia Tech's psyche, given they've lost 3 in a row, including a couple that they felt slipped away from them, given some of the speculation surrounding Justin Fuente. It's not going to be enough to pounce on Virginia Tech early. You can't leave that door ajar, which Georgia Tech did against Duke and against Virginia, to allow those teams to not only get back into it, but take the lead on Georgia Tech deep into the fourth quarter. So it's going to be about completeness and consistency for Georgia Tech, on top of the balance that I think they'll need to move the ball downfield against Virginia Tech.
Yeah, you touch on it. Like, the state of these programs are in kind of two different directions, even though they're both 3 and 4 teams. You know, you look at Georgia Tech under Jeff Collins. This is definitely much in a program that you now are starting to see the substantial improvement from the Paul Johnson years, which, granted, was a big challenge going from a triple option offense to what we have now, more of a pro style, more of a modern college offense. And for Virginia Tech, you know, especially offensively, it's decreased. It's kind of they've struggled a lot. Granted, they had their best performance last week, but it's still not been, you know, phenomenal throughout the season. So just talk about the mindset for Georgia Tech heading into this one. They have to still feel good about themselves despite, you know, the result last week, but they're still in a much better state than they were even last season.
Sure. And going back to that Virginia game, as miraculous as that comeback was, and gosh, to recover 2 consecutive onside kicks, and in the span of less than a minute and a half, give yourself a chance at a Hail Mary to potentially send the game into overtime. That showed a lot of fighting spirit from Georgia Tech. Yet, I think the mood in that locker room was more somber afterwards, because they knew they didn't do the things earlier in the game and didn't have that attention to detail to allow them a more legitimate chance at the end, where a Hail Mary situation wouldn't have been required. I will say this: Georgia Tech respects this Virginia Tech team, as I think every ACC team should, because in Virginia Tech, Georgia Tech sees a lot of similarities to its own journey this season. Georgia Tech has lost 3 games by a touchdown or less, much like Virginia Tech. We know the narrative could be completely different for the Hokies had those end game scenarios turned out in their favor, in much the same way Georgia Tech knows it wouldn't be a 3 and 4 team right now if it had changed the outcome late in the ball games against several of its opponents this year. And also, you look at Virginia Tech, they're a disciplined team in spite of all of this, with their low penalty count, with their low giveaway count. So one of the big keys and one of the big messages to Georgia Tech this week has been attention to detail. You know, turnovers, penalties, those little things will add up. And if you're not minding them, you will not like what you see on the scoreboard comes game's end. So it's going to be a fairly well-matched contest, I think, between Virginia Tech and Georgia Tech. Similar narratives coming in, and, we expect probably another close matchup on the field.
Absolutely. And something we talked about last week is the improved Georgia Tech defense. You know, everyone's giving up a ton of yards to Brennan Armstrong. So you kind of want to use that as a mute point at this point. He is, you know, maybe the best quarterback in the conference, the way he's playing, along with Kenny Pickett. So Braxton Burmeister comes in. This is a guy who's really been banged up of late, but has shown flashes of his talent and his ability. And you know, Virginia Tech got introduced to a new star last week when you have a freshman run for 151 yards and Malachi Thomas. They have Raheem Blackshear. So this Virginia Tech running game came into form last week. It definitely had its best performance. So how important will it be for Georgia Tech to probably stop the run first and try to force, you know, the deep passing game for Virginia Tech, which has been the weakness of this offense?
I think that's how a lot of teams are going to attack Virginia Tech. Georgia Tech, boy, they're defensive backs. I do not envy them, because in 4 straight games, they face teams that rank in the top 15 nationally in total offense. And all of them do it heavily through the air, as we saw, especially last Saturday with Virginia. They know that Braxton Burmeister is a threat when he pulls the ball down. Defensive coordinator Andrew Thacker said this week that he believes Burmeister is the best top-end accelerator at quarterback in the ACC. So those linebackers will have to be on alert, and they will need to fly to snuff out that part of Virginia Tech's running game. And I think what you saw from Thomas last week with 3 touchdowns, 150 plus on the ground, it would behoove Virginia Tech, you feel like, for them to work heavy on the ground, kind of like what Duke did the other week versus Georgia Tech, and to make it incumbent on those down defenders for the Yellow Jackets to try to stop that, so that where they now have to lean a little more into the passing game. With Georgia Tech, I think third down defense has been elusive for them the last 3 weeks, and that's going to be huge for them because for a Virginia Tech team that we know has not maybe given itself its best form this year, if they can roll together some third downs, that's such an easy way to gather confidence. And Georgia Tech needs to be on guard against that on Saturday.
Well, Andy, I want to thank you for joining me another week. Good news for you. Georgia Tech doesn't play Liberty unless it's in a bowl game, so I don't have to bother you one more week. But the spread is 4.5. Again, not going to ask you to give a prediction, but a couple keys for Georgia Tech in this one as the Hokies head down to the 404, as the hat would say.
Yeah, I'll just summarize it thusly, Trey. Like I said earlier, not only a strong start, but a sustained start for Georgia Tech through the first half. I think their wide receivers have to win their one-on-one matchups and rallying to the football because Thomas is feeling confident. Blackshear has shown flashes this year, and Burmeister is somebody who can really have a defense's head spinning with his ability to pull it and go. So just fast-flowing on the ground whenever Virginia Tech carries the football. I think those will be the top 3 keys for Georgia Tech, and make sure that turnover margin isn't tilted too heavily in Virginia Tech's direction. Both teams have been really good in protecting the football, and whichever team I think wins the turnover matchup in a game that, as you alluded to, it figures to be tight, I think they are going to have the edge.
Well, Andy, as always, can I ask how can fans, maybe some fans heading to the game, want to listen to it in the stadium, connect with you as always?
At Andy Demetra, I'm easy to find on Twitter. And if you're coming to Atlanta or driving from Atlanta, we'll be on 93.7 FM in Atlanta. So listen to the 93.7 FM broadcast in Atlanta during the day. And maybe as you're leaving Atlanta, you can listen to the Braves on 93.7 at night. So there you go.
Hey, there you go. Braves game coming on tonight. You got the World or Friday. Yeah, this comes out Friday. So the World Series. And I did pick the Braves in 6. I want to add that as a note here. So, Andy, thanks so much for joining me again this week. And like I said, I don't have to bother you anymore unless Georgia Tech plays Liberty in a bowl game.
Well, we'll see. Stranger things have happened. I appreciate it, Trey.
Absolutely. As always, you can connect with me at Trey Lyle VT or at Fastlane, Ed Lane, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Thank you for listening to this special edition of the Fastlane.